Depending on when you watch this video, if the Splunk app for AWS version 5.2 is out, you can pursue the SQS-based S3 input previously described. Until then, you want to pursue this legacy method that we're going to go over so that data in the app is correctly represented. And that method has worked very well, and here it is described in detail. So config, AWS config is set up to write data to an S3 bucket. It also sends data to an SNS topic, which subscribes to or publishes to an SQS queue. The Splunk add-on then subscribes to that SQS queue to see when there are any updates, and then goes and fetches those updates with step 5. And until version 5.2 or 5.3 of the app is out, this is the method you want to pursue so that, again, data within the app is adequately represented. The flow for setting up AWS config is very similar to what was in the slide we just showed. So first we need to go into config, and we need to enable config. So we're going to go under settings, and we need to turn it on. In my case here, it's already on, but you'd want to go ahead and turn this on. Enable resources here, and you're going to write it. You're going to probably create a bucket. So have it write it to a brand new S3 bucket, and make sure to follow naming conventions. So you can't use underscores or a few other characters, I believe, or capitals. So all lowercase and dashes, as I have here. This part now is important with the legacy method, where we're going to create an SNS topic. We're going to stream this to an SNS topic, and in your case, first time, you're going to create a topic, give it a name, and then also it needs a role associated with it. So I opted to just create a new role the first time I did this, and then here it is displayed, versus you could also choose a role and select a role that you already created afterwards. Once you save that, you can go back to services, and we need the SNS topic got created, but the SQS queue has not been created yet. So we need to go to SQS queue, and we need to basically create a new queue here that's going to be for that legacy config method. And so I already have one here. So if I just select this and edit, so just to show you configure queue, nothing special about it here. This is optional, this config letter, legacy dead letter, that's optional. But what we have to do next here after creating this queue is queue actions and subscribe queue to SNS topic. And then this is where we select the topic that was previously created and subscribe. And so now that we have done the subscription, now that we've writing to an S3 bucket, we are done on setting up config. However, the downside is that we've only done it for one region. We're going to have to go through all our other regions and repeat the same process. And now that you've configured AWS config within the AWS side, now you're ready to come in here on the Splunk side and add a config input. Now in this case, we are not doing the newer SQS-based S3. We're doing the old-fashioned config input that we want to select. And so once we select that, you'll have a screen similar to this appear. What's nice about this is we can add multiple regions in here. So if we put in the account and add all the different regions, and we can map it here to one queue, right? And we don't have one for Singapore. Let's go back down here, go Oregon, and select our CloudTrail, config SQS here. So I call that config legacy. And I can add another, so I can keep adding as many as I need in one configuration, which is a nice feature. And then once I'm done with that, I should have an input type here of config, like this config legacy one here. And if I edit that just to show what it looks like, there it is, just what we saw before. And then once I'm saved them and maybe waited a couple of minutes, I'm ready to come and validate that I see data. So I can come to the Splunk dashboard for the app overview page, and if I see these counters increment, I know that data has been processed. And for me, I personally like to instead run a search where I do source type equals AWS :config, and there I can see then all of the events for the last few minutes or last 24 hours here that have come in. So like with the CloudTrail, you can change this to all-time real-time or all-time or a 5-minute window, 1-minute window, and see events as they come streaming in. In the search, I like to do AWS config star because you have multiple source types here. We haven't covered config rule input type, but that's another input that we can add. But then config takes care of config and config notification. And while we're at it, for the config rule, if we create new input, here is a config rules input. And at the end of the day, here's one we already have, and here's what it looks like. So very similar to just regular config.